This is episode 21 of Art, Why I Stuck with a Junkie Jazz Man. In episode 20, we move out to the valley, to Van Nuys. In episode 21, Art starts playing jingles and is richly rewarded for it. During the 1950s and early 60s, Art had played on the soundtracks of Bells Are Ringing, Judy Holliday, Dean Martin, Poppy, Alan Arkin, Rita Moreno, and other films. One night on television, we watched The Subterraneans, George Peppard, Leslie Caron. Art was featured on the soundtrack of that brutally gauche and dreadful movie. He'd never had a chance to see it. As we watched, Art interrupted almost every sentimental scene with happy shouts. "That's me, that's me," elevating that dreck, his pristine, sad, and tender soul. In 1976, Art was looking for more of that kind of work, which was available then before today's outsourcing and simulated orchestras. Clint Eastwood, a fan, had dropped into Dante's and had brought him in to work on The Enforcer. Encouraged, Art devoted himself to rehearsing with bands, taking the opportunity to practice reading complex charts he hadn't written himself, and doubling. He had to be deft with all the wind instruments: tenor sax, baritone, clarinet, flute, and even piccolo. Not far from us, in a lovely, genteel part of Van Nuys, lived a high school music teacher and musician, John Magruder. He and his gracious wife, Joy, presided over a weekly rehearsal band, which practiced in their giant dining room beneath a crystal chandelier. Joy baked cookies and served snacks and entertained musicians and their wives. The players were all studio guys keeping up their skills. Art was asked to participate, and he did, religiously. He also joined a, quotes, real performing band, Don Ellis's. It was a high-energy, electrified ensemble playing odd-paced, hard charts that took the players through extremes of harmony, time signatures, and volume. Its beauty, when it had it, was a result of the unexpectedness of the effects, the shifting within a single bar sometimes, I think, of time and key. At its best, along with all the drama, it still swung. Art was there to practice, as he'd always done, on the job, and to show off as well, to prove that he could play that stuff. I loved his appetite for challenges. He knew it kept him young. Art was 50. It seemed as if most other members of the band were under 30, and some of them were using the most popular drug of that time, cocaine. So Art began to use it too, though not a lot just then. He, or we together, still drove to Venice regularly to visit Anne and John, who hadn't moved out to the country yet. And Art got high on that bit of extra methadone he still could buy from them. Jingles. At Dante's, a jazz club in the valley where Art had started playing regularly, we ran into Don Pystrup, a composer-arranger. Art had known him during his brief, fraught days with Buddy Rich's band in the late 60s, when Art's spleen had ruptured and he'd almost died. This was shortly before he wound up in Synanon. Don was writing jingles for TV and radio commercials. He would come to Dante's whenever Art worked there and get very drunk and sing Art's praises, hang on him with love and promises of jingle jobs. And then he'd disappear, leaving our hopes up for work. He didn't call. Then we'd see him again a few months later at Dante's Plastered, and he'd go through the same routine again. I told Art Don Pystrup reminded me of the prototypically engaging drunk in Chaplin's City Lights who didn't recognize you sober. But one day he came through for us. We got a call from a contractor, and Art did the first of many of Don's anonymous commercials. He got double scale for these, a couple of $100 in those days maybe. But afterwards, there were residuals. After a given number of airings, you got another check, and another, and another. Checks were only for $33 and change, but they came and came. We'd go down to the Musicians Union, Local 47, and delighted by the results of collective bargaining, we'd gather up handfuls of these envelopes, each with a check inside. I owe Don Pystrup one of the most memorable evenings I've had, and because I wasn't drinking, I'm probably the only one who was ever able to recall it. Don invited us for dinner, along with Bill Holman, the well-known jazz composer-arranger. The dinner, prepared by Don's sophisticated, quiet wife in their big Toluca Lake home, was very good, with the guys knocking back straight whiskeys before and during. Afterwards, they adjourned to Don's studio for brandy, while his wife demurred, telling her husband not to tire us too much playing his award-winning jingles. She warned me that he would play them all night long if no one stopped him. At that point, I could have opted to hang out with her. She seemed amusing, but the men I thought might be more interesting, and anyway, I was accustomed to being where Art liked me to be, where he was. Don did trot out his commercials for us all to admire, and they were very good. He had a surprising, recently discovered feel for country music and was getting hired to compose a lot of charts for banjos, steel guitars. He explained to Art that that was why he couldn't use him more than he did. And then, since Don and Bill were both arrangers, the conversation turned to jazz and the failure of many jazz big band and string arrangements. Bill Holman shot me down pretty sharply when I had the temerity to say I liked the sappy string and chorus arrangements Charlie Parker had chosen to play to back in the 1950s. I persisted, saying those performances reminded me of post-war Japanese toys with their brilliant, strange colors and charm, surreal. Parker's harshness and true soulfulness, above and through and under all that syrup, had been startling, mind-blowing, at least for me. And the end result was, I thought, unintentionally new. Bill told me my response was ignorant. He didn't listen, but interrupted like men do and said, asserting, bored, the obvious, but think how much better it would have been if they had had a good arranger. Meaning him, I guessed. I think I was talking aesthetics, and he was talking music. And then the conversation turned to Stravinsky, and I was given an opening wherein I had the opportunity to redeem myself by quoting Mr. Stravinsky's remarks to me and my former husband apropos electronic music. I knew Igor Stravinsky from my aunt and uncle's soirees and their intimate Christmas mornings, where Igor and Vera and Bob Kraft had breakfasted with all of us on crab. One evening, while I was still married to Barrett, I saw the great man in the lobby of a movie theater. We'd just seen The Red Desert by Antonioni. The Stravinskys were about to see it. I have always been shy, but I knew Barrett would love to meet them. So I plunged ahead, and after clarifying who I was and where in Europe my aunt and uncle were living then, I made the introductions. Barrett got his thrill. He shook Stravinsky's hand. We talked a bit about the movie. Then Barrett said, "The music in this movie is electronic. What do you think of electronic music, Mr. Stravinsky?" Stravinsky replied dryly, "How can we discuss something that doesn't exist?" This anecdote got me some gratifying chuckles. And then Pystra pulled out a complete manuscript of a small Stravinsky piece. And these three drunks each took a part and read and sang it all at sight together. Their seriousness, the angular, difficult music, and what they did so casually awed me. I watched Art, happy, intent, and unself-conscious, bawling out his part in his oddly tuneless voice. I loved him so much at that moment, loved the friends who'd brought him to it. I thought, well, I'll remember this.